Isn't it incredible how much simpler things are when you don't sucker punch opponents when you have a 1 goal lead late in the third? No matter how much they might be asking for it. What's cracking, everybody, and welcome back to Kraken R&R, where the Seattle Kraken win, breaking their 2-game loss streak this time. But it's a team that's been slumping, and against a good Winnipeg Jets team, they needed this one. It's a 3-2 win for the Kraken over the Jets this time, after having lost to them in overtime 3-2 the last time these two teams faced, in a game that, coming in, felt somewhat similar to this one. In both games, the Kraken were coming in off of a loss, and the Jets were coming in off of a back-to-back, having played in Vancouver the previous night, and were starting Riddick in both of those games. But last time, while that one ended in frustration, as with a 1-goal lead sucker punched, I think it was Dubois, sent the Jets to the power play, they tied it in the final seconds, and then won it in overtime. But this time, the Kraken just win 3-2, nice, plain and simple in regulation. Of course, for the Kraken, it certainly helped that they had their second pair defense back, both having missed a few games. Alexiak 3 games after that suspension following his hit in DC, and Schultz back for the first time following injury with the dirty hit that he received the game after in Florida. Meanwhile, on the offensive end, where the Kraken have been struggling over this slump outside of the game against Florida, only scoring 1 or 2 goals a game in the 5 losses over these last 6 games, it may have helped that Hackstall mixed up the forward lines quite a bit. Now, the Beniers line with McCann and Eberle on either side, that line didn't change other than moving up to the official first line, which it kind of felt like the first line over the last few games anyway, but they were officially the first line coming into this game. And then beyond that, things again were changed up quite a bit. We still saw Wennberg and Schwartz together, though this time on the second line, and now paired with Bjorkstrand instead of Burakovsky, with Burakovsky moving down to a third line that was definitely quite a bit changed up. That one still centered by Gord, but on the other side was Ryan Donato, and that was a line that was particularly dangerous in this game. Now, the first line with Beniers was still the best line out on the ice for the Kraken all game long, but this third line with Donato, Gord, and Burakovsky was easily the second best line out on the ice. And that isn't to say that Bjorkstrand didn't fit with the other two. In fact, I think Bjorkstrand probably played the best of any of the 3 guys on that second line. But again, this new look third line definitely seemed to have a little bit more chemistry and certainly was creating more opportunities in the offensive end of the ice. Meanwhile, then the fourth line was centered again by Geeky, with Tanev and Sprong on either side. And jumping right into the game itself, it almost made a difference right away, as within the first couple minutes of the game, it's actually that second line that creates a golden opportunity as Bjorkstrand gets a shot off on goal. The save is made by Riddick on a backhanded shot from a tight angle, but the puck ends up on the other side of Riddick and just sitting out in front of the basically completely empty net. I mean, seriously, it's sitting right there basically on the goal line. An autumn breeze could knock this puck in, but while Wennberg is there, he isn't able to get a stick or really any other part of his body, which it seemed like he tried to get a skate to it, which then could have, if that had knocked it in, led to a whole review about whether he kicked it in, and that would have been a whole thing. But regardless, Capobianco is there to keep Wennberg's stick off of it, and then as Wennberg's falling to the ice trying to flail at it to get any part of his body to knock it in, it's actually an old friend of the Kraken in Carson Kuhlman who gets his stick to the puck first and is able to shove it out of the goal's way, or shove it out of the goal area in general, and keep this one out. Oh, and yes, by the way, Kuhlman was playing in this game, and actually is kind of a normal thing. Got the start on the first line, or at least at faceoff. He pretty much quickly went off and then joined his normal fourth line, but he was out on the ice to start off the game at puck drop for the Jets, after having been on the Kraken roster the last time they were at home. Anyway, thanks again to Capobianco pulling Wennberg off the puck, and then Kuhlman pulling the puck off the goal line. We are still scoreless as we get into the middle part of the first. At which point, the penalties start coming, and they both come for the Jets pretty quickly. And the first one, once again, wouldn't you know it, involves our old friend Kuhlman, who draws the interference call on Dunn. Dunn heads to the box, the Jets to the power play, and while the power kill, or penalty kill for the Kraken, is going fairly well for a bit, eventually Larson gets his stick hit up high on, I think it was Dubois. Anyway, it sends Larson to the box, and the Jets now with a little bit over a minute of 5-on-3. Which they would not need very much of, is right off the faceoff, 3 seconds into the 5-on-3, the puck's in the back of the net. It's a 1 faceoff for Dubois and the Jets in the Kraken end of the ice that quickly gets out to the other side, or the other faceoff circle, onto the stick of Josh Morrissey, who's been on an absolute tear, picking up mostly assists to this point in the season, for the Jets, actually leading their team in points from the blue line. And while it looks like he's going to take a shot from there, instead, Morrissey slaps the pass to the backside of the net, where Scheifele's waiting on the back door to tip it into the basically empty net, as Grubauer was out at the top of the crease, waiting to get in position, or actually in position to block a Morrissey shot. Instead, again, it's a pass, and he picks up his 30th assist of the season with the Scheifele power play goal. And the Kraken then still not only are down by 1, but have basically 2 minutes of power play left to kill off, which fortunately they are able to do with relative ease. It's a pretty good penalty kill the rest of the way at 5-on-4 instead of 5-on-3. And then not long after, the Kraken get a power play, which actually looked pretty good. They get a couple of very good chances for Burakovsky. One is a crossing pass, but both Burakovsky misses the net, both times having some places to put the puck, especially towards the top of the net, as Riddick was taking away the bottom, but leaving the top of the net pretty open. Still, Burakovsky misses the mark on both, and we get to the end of the first eventually with really not too much going on the rest of the period, with the score still 1-0 Jets. And it does still take a little while into the second for really much of anything to happen either end of the ice. But fortunately, once the momentum does start building, it starts building in Seattle's favor, as they get a few shifts in a row of pretty good offensive hockey, just continuing to press over and over again into the offensive end on the Jets, who, while they are able to escape their end a few times, it's pretty much always just to get the puck dumped into the Kraken end, go off for a change, and then regroup back in their end of the ice. But for the Kraken, while this is leading to a number of shots on goal, as they're really starting to rack up the shots on goal on the Jets, at this point pulling away as far as that's concerned, none of them are getting past Riddick in net. That is up until Jordan Eberle. I mean, woo! Play starts as the Kraken get the puck up along the boards, keep the offensive end. Dunn goes D-to-D along the blue line to Larson. Larson looks for a shot, but instead fires off a pass down to the other side near the bottom of the faceoff circle, where Eberle's waiting. It is a little bit off to the side of Eberle, so he has to catch it with the forehand, then quickly goes backhand all in one motion, spinning 180, fires off a backhand shot, and roofs it into the back of it with an absolutely nasty spinning backhand shot to beat Riddick. Not much of a chance he has here. It's a highlight reel goal from Eberle, and it ties the game at 1. And this also is not the first time we've seen this kind of highlight reel, backhand, nasty kind of shot from Eberle, as he actually did the exact same thing, or a very similar thing, just on the other side of the offensive zone, last year against the Rangers to Shesterkin, who, again, ended up winning the Vezina Trophy, so that just shows you how dangerous of a shot this is from Eberle. Now, after the game, Hackstall said that when this was all developing and Larson had the puck, he was screaming at him to just shoot it, and Dave, we know you like your shots from the top of the offensive zone from your defensemen and looking for rebounds or tip-ins or what have you. It's something that frustrated us as that being the main part of the Kraken offensive structure last season and leading to not a lot of goal scoring. Fortunately, Larson either didn't hear him or ignored him if he was yelling it, and went for the pass to Eberle, as Eberle makes the magic happen and ties the game here at 1. Which isn't to complain too much about Hackstall, as he and that coaching staff clearly have done a fantastic job to this point in the season, turning things around from where last season left off, or just last season in general. Kraken do almost immediately surrender this. I mean, I guess it's not a lead, but they almost let the Jets take the lead back, as a 2-on-1 chance just about 30 seconds later goes in the Jets' favor. The nice saucer pass gets over the lone defenseman, but this time it bounces off the ice before the shot can get off, so it becomes hard to handle, and while it does lead to another pass and a pretty dangerous shot, it gives Grubauer the time to recover and make a still pretty nice save to keep it out of the net. The Kraken press back the other way, but aren't able to score, and then eventually, Borgen gets caught for a holding the stick call, and he heads to the box. Now, I will say, with this call that goes against Borgen, after the 3 penalties called in the first, the 2 for the Jets and 1 for the Kraken, it seemed like the refs were just going to kind of swallow their whistles unless there was something so blatantly obvious that they had to call it, as there were at least 3 instances, or blatantly obvious instances that I can think of what could have easily been called penalties against both teams that went uncalled over the last kind of 20 to 30 minutes of playing time. There was a tripping that would have gone against Seattle, a slashing that would have gone against the Jets, and a interference that also would have gone against the Jets, none of which get called. So then, while by the rule this holding the stick call on Borgen absolutely was the right call, it did seem a bit against the flow of how things had been being called since that last penalty in the first. Again, you can't really complain about it too much because Borgen absolutely did hold his stick and that was a penalty. It just seemed against the flow of how things have been going. But while you can't really complain about the penalty, what you can complain about is the Kraken penalty kill, as they quickly let up yet another power play goal. This time, I will admit it's a little bit on Grubauer. The Kraken penalty kill unit can't get the puck out of their end of the ice or clear it in any way, so the Jets are able to hold the offensive end, get one very good scoring chance that Grubauer comes up with a nice save on. But again, the puck doesn't exit the offensive end, so eventually Morrissey gets it down to Kyle Connor. Connor fires off a shot, and while Grubauer does make the initial save, it does sneak through his 5-hole and bounces out into basically completely open ice in the crease with an empty net to shoot at. And it's Dubois, and actually one other Jet who are there to get to the puck first. Dubois is the one that gets his stick on it and puts it into the empty net to make it a 2-1 game with the second Jets power play goal of the game. So after a couple pretty strong games to finish the road trip, at least for the penalty kill anyway, not really the rest of the team, but the penalty kill was doing well at the back end of that road trip. In this game, it was a pretty tough one. Sure, you can point out that the first power play goal that they allow was 5-on-3, even if it was 3 seconds into 5-on-3, but even at that, the play that led to that 5-on-3, going back to the first period for a second, was started with a 4-on-1 chance for the Jets. Grubauer makes the save on that 4-on-1 chance with Larson being the lone defender, but that's definitely something where you'd expect the Jets to probably score on a 4-on-1. Now again, they don't end up scoring 4-on-1 as Grubauer does make that save, but the 5-on-3 happens because Larson is desperately trying to prevent a follow-up opportunity, still fighting off multiple Jets along the boards, and that's how he ends up with the high stick and in the box to lead to that 5-on-3 opportunity. The point being, other than the period of time right after that 5-on-3 where they still had to kill off another basically 2 minutes, it was not a particularly pretty night for the Kraken penalty kill. The good news, at least on that front though, is that this was the last penalty the Kraken would have to kill off in this game, and at least at even strength, especially 5-on-5, there was a 2-minute period of 4-on-4 during this game that honestly the Jets got the better of, but 5-on-5, the Kraken were easily the better team, and after this goal goes in to make it 2-1 Jets, the Kraken pressed right back trying to score and getting another few chances off on net, or actually another few good pushes with multiple chances and each shift for the Kraken. They aren't able to score though, and we do get to the end of the second with the score still 2-1 Jets. And at this point, I will say this game was starting to feel a bit like one where the Kraken were going to play like the better team for the majority of it, but still somehow come up short. But just 16 seconds into the third, that all changes as it's that third line, the new look third line out on the ice. Burakovsky in the corner gets the puck up to Gord. Gord looks around for a second and then fires the puck not at the net, but just to the side of the net where Ryan Donato is waiting to tip it home to tie the game at 2. For Donato, it's his 6th of the season and now 3 in the last 3 games after having been a little bit quiet there for a stretch, but a goal now in each of the last 3 games as he is really starting to heat up, and now the second one in a row that he's tipped in from in front of the net, doing a really good job of getting net front and giving those as options to the guys up by the point. And I gotta say, from here really through the rest of the third period, which, as we'll find out, turns out to be the rest of the game, even if at the end of the second period I wasn't feeling particularly good about how this game was going, especially with Riddick making some nice saves, it kind of feeling like it was going to go the way of a lot of the games on the road trip, and over this last game of, or this last stretch of 6 where the Kraken have had a hard time scoring, that they were going to get a lot of chances and just not be able to get another one in the net. But as soon as the second goal went in, and as the Kraken continued to lay on the pressure throughout the rest of the third, really not letting the Jets get much of anything going, this seemed like a game that the Kraken were either going to win in overtime, or, I mean, overtime, anything happened, but at least get to overtime and get a point out of, or they were just going to win it in regulation. And sure enough, the Kraken controlled the entire rest of the third period, outside of maybe 1 or 2 chances for the Jets, but it did kind of look like a Jets team that was on the back half of a back-to-back, which kind of was the case in the last one, but again, the Kraken let them hang on to that one by getting to overtime and then winning it in overtime. And in this game, as we got deeper into the third, it started to seem more and more like, especially after the Kraken had a second failed power play of the game, that this game might be destined for overtime as well, once again with the score tied 2-2. But thankfully, even with the Kraken now having won 4 straight overtime appearances in a row since losing that game in overtime to the Jets, this one never gets to overtime, as with just about 4.5 minutes left in the game, hits that first line out on the ice. McCann puts the puck off the side of the net as he circles around behind, but picks it back up, gets it up to Beniers in the corner. Beniers continues the puck up along the boards to Schultz. Schultz puts it out into the middle of the ice, where McCann's able to pick it up and roof it into the back of the net to give the Kraken the 3-2 lead late in this game. It's an absolutely perfect shot short side into the top corner from McCann that beats Riddick up high and gives the Kraken that late lead that they would never surrender, and honestly, never even coming that close to surrendering, as they don't even let Riddick out of the net until there's less than a minute left in the game, And the only goal that gets close to being scored from here on out is Eberle missing the empty net. And I mean, it was a pretty bad miss. He had an easy shot at it, but he just looks to the sky in kind of disappointment, knowing that that's one for the stat books that he's not going to have. Either way, his team ends up winning and getting 2 points in the standings, and a good win for the Kraken again over a good team that helps hopefully start getting back to those winning ways. And not to get too far ahead of ourselves, but winning ways that they have a good chance of continuing, with a couple of teams coming up before the Christmas break that have been struggling to this point in the season, with the Blues, who still are a pretty good team, but have had a pretty rough go of things since they beat the Kraken in that game early on in the season. It was only their third game of the season. They were undefeated at that point, but again, things have kind of gone south since then. And then the final game would be against the Canucks in Vancouver, which, I mean, you say that's a game the Kraken should win based on how their season's going and how the Canucks season is going. But, I mean, we've seen that story before already once this season, and the Kraken are still 0 for 5 against Vancouver. Anyway, that's all for later in the week as far as this game is concerned. As I've said a couple of times now, a fantastic win for the Kraken and a bounce-back win after a pretty tough road trip. Obviously, easily the worst road trip of the season, as they went 1 for 3 in those 4 games, all against very good teams. But considering the Kraken had gone into that road trip, I think it was 8-1-1, it was definitely a bit of a letdown and continued this slump that they've been in, where they've lost 5 of the last 6 coming into this game. And against a good Jets team, even if they were on a back-to-back, this is a game that really should get those juices flowing again for the Kraken. Now, given how this game went, especially on the forward end, if, again, you want to look into the future in those 2 games before the Christmas break, it will be interesting to see how much of those line change-ups on the forward end are going to stay the same, especially in this next game against the Blues. I'd have to imagine that third line stays the same, as, again, outside of the first line with Beniers, Eberle, and McCann, that was the most dangerous line the Kraken had going. As far as the other ones, I guess we'll see what Hackstall has in store for that game. But with how the Kraken won this one and it being a pretty complete 60-minute win outside of the penalty kill, which continues to be the problem for the most part, this was a game that I think they probably stay with the same lineup if they can going into this next game. Obviously, it also helps again to have your full complement of defensemen, which brings me to the 3 stars in this game for the Kraken, the first of which is Jared McCann. He has the game-winning goal, which weirdly, even though this is the 14th goal of the season for McCann, and he leads the team in that category now by a couple of goals, it was his first game-winning goal of the season, and actually his first goal in the third period so far this season. So even with him scoring a lot, they haven't been necessarily the goals that have a ton of meaning late in the game. He's more been scoring at the beginning of the game, which also has a ton of meaning, and any goal obviously has meaning. But anyway, this being McCann's first third period goal of the season and first game-winning goal, I did think was at least an interesting anecdote or fun fact for this game. I actually got that one from RJ of Emerald City Hockey, talking to him during the game. Anyway, big goal again for McCann that ends up winning the game for the Kraken, and a good game in general for McCann as he continues to play very well on that line with Beniers and Eberle. Speaking of whom, Jordan Eberle is the second star. I think he could have easily also been the first star in this game. His goal is, I think, a bit nicer than McCann's, even though McCann's was a very nice goal in its own right. But a backhand 180 goal, I think, takes the cake. And while McCann, I think, maybe had the slightly better 60 minutes, which is why I gave him the first star, Eberle, especially after he scored that goal, nearly put in a couple of more. And I also may have docked him a little bit as, you know, kind of poking fun with him missing the empty net there at the end of the game, which also would have gotten, I think it was Schwartz and Beniers assists. And any point Beniers can get towards that Calder run is one we'd like to see happen. Anyway, Eberle missed that goal, so I'll demote him to the second star. Still, though, a great game from Eberle, and that first line continues to be fantastic for the Kraken, even with them now a first line instead of a second line. Clearly, that pressure of being the first line having no effect on their play whatsoever. And finally, as we get to the third star, this is where we have one of those 2 returning defensemen for the Kraken. It's going to be Justin Schultz for me, although Alexiak had a pretty good game, I thought, as well. Certainly a couple of pretty good plays in the defensive end. His offensive end still was maybe a little lackluster, but Schultz, great in the offensive end and very good in the defensive end, other than he had a one shift that was a bit shaky where he kind of got hit up along the boards and there was no call there, and then back at the other end he got a bit of a giveaway. Either way, outside of one shift that didn't really go his way, he had a pretty good game all in all for the Kraken. Of course, he also had the primary assist on McCann's game-winning goal, and it was just good to see him back in the lineup after that injury, which kept him out a couple more games longer than we thought it was going to. but glad to see him back. So again, it's McCann, Eberle, and Schultz as the 3 stars. And as always, I'd love to hear what you think down in the comment section about this game, who your 3 stars would be, and what the heck, even if we do have 2 games left, what you as a Kraken fan would like to have for Christmas. At least have for the team, or just in general, have fun with it. Anyway, if you have made it to this point, thank you very much for watching. If you did like or enjoy this video, there are buttons for that kind of stuff down below. Help support the channel, so I'd appreciate you using them. And until that game against the Blues and the Larson bobblehead night, so hopefully a good game from Larson coming up. Stay safe out there, be good to each other. God bless, and go Kraken!